Hello again. Now, the African Rail Industry Association is hailing the establishment of an interim position of infrastructure manager at Transnet. It hopes this will speed up reform of the country's ailing rail network and eventually pave the way for participation of private operators. African Rail Industry Association's CEO, Mesela Kope-Nhlapo, joining us now via Zoom. Mesela, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. I thought you'll be welcoming a permanent appointment, not an interim appointment.
Half a loaf is better than nothing. Good afternoon.
That's a nice way of putting it, because it's been empty for some time. Now there's an interim position you think is going to assist the industry, especially Transnet.
Absolutely. In terms of the National Rail Policy under Section 6, it provides that there will be a vertical separation of Transnet in terms of operations, infrastructure manager, and infrastructure owner. And I think it's quite important that we clarify any miscommunication that may happen in the future when we talk about bringing in private sector into the railway sector. There is no privatization at site. All that private sector is looking for is the right to use the land. So the infrastructure manager that will be coming in will ensure that there is a plain level field for all participants, including private sector and public sector. And public sector meaning Transnet, including PRASA.
Yeah, but we've seen Transnet literally, really, some people have said, has been decimated in terms of leadership and structure. This one position on its own surely would need more support.
The infrastructure manager is informed by the policy, and it is my view and the view of the industry that it's time that a group CEO and the CEO for TFR be appointed as soon as possible. The longer we wait, it's that in itself, that waiting is not in the best interest of this country, the people of this country. We need to change where we come from, where the unemployment rates are showing us, where the economy is showing us. We need that growth. And it's through the rail reform that we'll be able to achieve that growth. And I'd like to congratulate business in general for having to work with government through the National Logistic Crisis Committee, that we are here to work together as South Africans to make sure that our country prosper. But it can only prosper when there are right policies in place that enable business to do what is good at business.
Yeah, what would you wish to see this interim infrastructure manager focus their energies on going forward?
I think it's quite important that the interim infrastructure manager will start working with the interim regulator, economic regulator, to facilitate negotiations between private sector and public sector on how rail reform would look like and how the terms and conditions will look like, including the service level agreement. But we must warn that the terms of third-party access, rail reform, cannot be terms which are not business-friendly. For an example, forcing private sector into labor agreements of a forced new bargaining council, that is a deal breaker. It cannot work. We are living in a free economy, and business should be able to lead its employees to make sure that their jobs are sustainable. Now, we cannot have a sustainable logistics system with Transnet using its dominant position, forcing bargaining council rules on private sector.
But the trade unions would argue that that will be opening the door for more exploitation of the workers.
We have trade unions on the private sector side, including the NUMSA of this world. They would have a view as well that they would like to see their members work too. So everybody needs to work together to ensure that everybody benefits. We have no time to waste. The time is now to implement rail reform.
When you talk rail reform, but you talk infrastructure, this is the reason why we're talking to you about your statement welcoming the interim infrastructure manager. Another topic that comes to mind is about security. I mean, Transnet, rails and lines have been vandalized. How critical do you see the issue of safety in terms of Transnet's infrastructure?
The country's infrastructure is quite critical to our future as a country and the region and the continent. And the security problems that we have seen have been resolved and partly and continue to be resolved by government working with Transnet and including security agencies. And that we commend Transnet for putting in that extra work. And we hope that it will not be 10% reduction of cable theft, but we'll see more of our infrastructure being saved. But it is key to understand that if you don't use your railways, you invite criminals. By bringing in third-party operators, by bringing in private sector, you will have traffic on those lines, and that will mean that there will be less chances of criminals encroaching on our infrastructure.
So we need to be using the railway system, more goods train, more wagons traveling between mines, for example, and the ports, and also up from the harbour, bringing up goods to the hinterland would be the way. Are you confident that we'll begin to see that more and more?
Absolutely. And then a few years ago, we started talking about where Transnet was going. We were right. And as long as we as civil society, we as business, stay here and stay the course and believe that the change, not standing on the side of the road and complaining, but be part of the change. And we are happy that we're able to work with government, we're able to work with Department of Transport, the Operation Vulindlela, the presidency, and so through that negotiations that we're able to craft a roadmap. That roadmap is because all parties come in and work together. But what is key is that rail reform today, not a second late, but it needs to be implemented as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I mean, you see a lot of trucks on the N3 highway, on the N4 highway, and I know that in some towns, smaller towns, local residents have been complaining about the number of trucks going through them, either on their way to Richards Bay, on their way to Durban, or on their way to Maputo in Mozambique. Final question to you, Mesela. What are the, if there are such, organizational changes you'd like to see at Transnet? What would your association want to see being done? Now you're happy there's an interim infrastructure manager. What else is missing, and what would you like to see?
We would like Transnet to bring back the scarred executives that have left the organization under difficult circumstances. These are Transnet employees that have been there for 20, 30 years and are willing to come back to work for this country. We wish to see that happening as soon as possible, and appointing chief executive officers at group level and TFR is going to be important. We'd like to see a Transnet that engages with the National Logistic Crisis Committee, so that there is trust amongst the parties to be able to work a way forward and know what is required to invest in the infrastructure. We would like to have an honest and transparent engagement between all parties concerned. But most importantly, we need as South African to realize that the rail reform is not a mistake. It was not by design that private sector should come in, but it's the revolving nature of the railways, that if we want to grow as an economy, the railways are the way to go. If we want to integrate the region, it's the railways. And what better way to integrate the continent through the railways and increase intra-Africa trade? The reform is strictly on improving the economy and nothing else.
Thank you very much, Mesela Kope-Nhlapo, the CEO of the Africa Rail Industry Association.